This is Fredrik Haren from the world of creativity. We are in Barcelona and we are here to learn about the Mierda Moment, the moment to take advantage of the power of your failures.
My name is Anna Alsina and I'm a glass artist from Barcelona. So the technique that I use is called glass casting, and the process is you start building a prototype. The prototype can be made of clay or you can use different systems, whatever you prefer. And once you have the prototype, then you have to build a mold which is made of plaster and silica. Once you have that mold, you remove the prototype from the inside, you basically destroy it. And then that empty space is what will become the sculpture. So what you do next is you put glass pieces inside, glass blocks, which you have to mathematically calculate and then alter the shapes of those blocks with some secret formulas before you put them inside the kiln. And then once it's inside the kiln, it takes about 2 weeks for optical glass to melt. So it's a very slow process, and it's very important that it takes that long, because if not, optical glass has tension and it can easily crack. And sometimes in glass it happens that you may finish a piece, but if you've cooled it down too fast in what they call the annealing stage, then after it comes out of the kiln, you may think, oh, it looks great, everything is fine, but then maybe 2 weeks later it cracks. So it's very important to do this sequence as slowly as possible, following all these specific scientific calculations. Yeah, glass art is a mix of science and art, I would say, because it requires math, it requires some chemistry too, and lots of patience.
Okay, so 2 weeks to melt, and then what happens?
And then what happens is after 2 weeks, well, during those 2 weeks, there's of course tension, because sometimes there can be thunderstorms and all these phenomena that you cannot control. So there's always 2 weeks of tension. There's always risk involved. Once it's done, you take it out of the oven, and the piece, when you take it out of the oven, looks like a block of ice. You don't see the inside. It's just an opaque surface. And you know that there's shapes inside that you intentionally placed in there before you put them in the kiln, but you will not be able to see them after you finish all the polishing process, which takes weeks, several weeks, in the way I do it for optical glass.
How is the polishing done?
It has several stages. Optical glass is extremely demanding, and it has, you start with a very coarse grid, 80 grid. The substance is called silicon carbide. I have a big polishing machine. Mine is called eccentric grinder. I guess it's pretty eccentric. So you put the piece on the machine with water, and then you use this silicon carbide. You start at the stage 80 grid, and then you polish all the sides at 80 grid, 3 hours per side. And then you have to clean the disc to make sure there's 0 particles in it, and go to the next stage. And there's several stages. So there's 80 grid, 220, 400, 600, 1000. And then cerium oxide is the magical final stage, the white powder, which makes it crystal clear. So you spend weeks miserable, but with this joy and happiness, thinking, in a few weeks I'm going to see what it's like to see the inside. And then suddenly, after 4 weeks of polishing, you finally see the inside that you worked to achieve.
First you start with clay, then you create a mold, then you put in the glass, then it takes 2 weeks for the glass to melt. And then if it hasn't cracked in that process, then you take it out, but you still don't see what you've done. And then you start to polish it, all 6 sides, each side 3 hours, and then you do it 6 different kinds of grades.
Exactly.
And that takes 4 weeks.
Exactly.
So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Exactly, yeah.
Before you finally know if...
Exactly, yes. So you spend exactly hundreds of hours not knowing what's going to happen. So, and after all this time, maybe this is the worst moment of a glass artist, when you've spent all these weeks and then suddenly you see that tiny scratch in that corner, really tiny. Because the problem with the pieces that I make is that they are completely crystal clear and there's no color. So it's all about the transparency and what happens inside. So everything around it has to be perfect. If you don't clean the disc after each stage properly, it can be that at the final stage, then that shows. And then, boom, you have to go back and start.
So
again.
basically one grain of this
Yes.
sand, right? It's
One
sand.
tiny grain.
One tiny grain can create a tiny scratch.
Yeah.
And then all of these hours of work
Exactly.
is gone.
And then you have to, smile, embrace failure. Yeah, when I started, I remember it was harder to get used to failure. If you don't learn how to deal with failure with glass, you will never find innovation. You'll never find anything. I guess it happens also with other disciplines, like scientists. Scientists find that eureka moment. It has a lot of miserable hours before that eureka moment sometimes or there's experiments in science, they take years, and then after 4 years they're about to patent something, and then oops, somebody came right like 1 week before, and then they lost those 4 years.
So what do we call that? That's the opposite of the eureka moment.
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
The eureka moment is the moment you have the brilliant idea, but there's equally a moment when you've been sanding it forever, and then suddenly you go, oh shit, there's a scratch.
Right.
That's the moment of failure. You have to have a name, just like the eureka moment.
I have to find a name. That's right. I'll have to think about it, because I can only think about like words like crab, but that's not politically correct.
How do you say it in Spanish?
Mierda. It's like shit.
That's it. That's it. It's the, how do you say it?
Mierda.
Mierda. So it's the mierda moment.
Mierda moment. Bingo. Okay. I'll take that.
And you told me earlier about when you started, you used some different glass or something. Tell me the story.
Yeah, I'm mostly self-taught, but I started with the 2 local artists from Barcelona. They were working with window glass. And window glass is a softer glass, and it usually melts pretty quickly. So within 24 hours, you can have your piece ready, no matter what the size is. Usually it's a very straightforward process. So when I decided to just take this path on my own, I wanted to explore new avenues. What I wanted to find is ways to explore this transparency and what would happen inside the glass, not so much focus on the outside, but the inside.
And then you said you want to, instead of the window glass, you wanted to work with this. And then what happened?
So then I had my first Mierda moment. So I'm like, okay, great. I contact the company, I buy this expensive glass, like different blocks. I prepare all this prototype, make the mold and everything, then I put it in the kiln. I use the same firing schedule that my teachers taught me. 24 hours, boom, push the button, then leave, and I go back the next day all excited, like, oh, it's gonna be this eureka moment. And I open the kiln and it all cracked. So it was a big mess. So I started reading, at that point I started reading scientific papers too to understand how optical glass behave. So I did it on my own, because artists will not share their secret formulas.
So when you first started with optical glass instead of window glass, what happened you said it cracked? It
cracked because what happened is that I tried to cool down the glass. So the way it happens in the oven is the glass goes up to 850 degrees. But it has a total of about 13 stages. So it starts going up to 200, then 400, 600. At 715 more or less, it's where there's the softening point. That's where the glass starts switching from solid to liquid. And it's that moment in which there's all this tension inside the glass, and then you have to control it before it goes up to 850. That's the temperature that I use, which allows me to keep these forms inside that I want. Once it's up at 850, then you leave it there for a little while, depending on the piece and the size of the sculpture. And then the part that takes the most is to cool it down. Because in optical glass, if you don't do the cooling stage very slowly, then it will crack. That's what happened the first time. It totally cracked because I brought it down so it goes from solid to liquid. And once it's liquid, has to go back to solid. This is the most stressful part for glass. You have to make it with a lot of love.
And you showed me that you had some pictures of the first time you tried it.
Of my failure, yeah. Using macro photography and then some colored lights. And it's a way, like a tribute to failure. Like even failures can have a beautiful side. And if you think about it, without failures, I think creativity would be impossible. I think we need to embrace failure, and we need to to really smile when we fail. That's exactly it, the picture of the Mierda Moment. It allows me to explore new possibilities. I had a notepad when I was starting with all my Mierda moments, and then I decided I wanted to convert those Mierda moments into learning experiences that could take me to new places. So I discovered that these Mierda moments are very important for finding new avenues in my creations.
So it's not celebrate failure, it's not learn from failure, it's trigger your creativity from failure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you described it better than myself. Thank
No,
you.
no, you described it. I'm just summarizing. But that's exactly it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
No, thank you. Then what you do is so full. I mean, if I write a book, I can do a spelling mistake and then I have to go back and correct it. But what you're doing is one of the most complicated. The potential of the moments are so many in this process.
Yes.
And if it happens, it's hours and hours lost.
Yes.
So you have very big experience of this.
Yes, and there's also then it teaches you how to handle patience and resilience. Thanks to glass, I've grown personally too.
And how often would you say that you failed then? After those hundreds of hours, how many times would you just throw it away?
In fact, very few times. Well, now maybe it doesn't sound right, but I haven't failed in a while now. So it's really nice to know that you get more and more control of everything. The more you try something, the better you get at it usually.
I think the key is that when you described the Mierda Moment to you, when it cracked, you said, oh, I started writing it down in a notebook, I started doing research, I started reading the papers,
yes.
Which you hadn't done before. Right?
No, exactly. No.
So suddenly you triggered yourself to do much more research to have to understand how to overcome that. And then when you overcome it, then this is the result.
Exactly.
So it triggers something. Just like an Eureka moment triggers an idea, the Mierda Moment triggers some kind of a what?
This push to keep going and just it's like a drive, I think, like a fearless drive.
Exactly. But a lot of people might fail and not get this.
Right, that's the huge risk, because if you fail, then you have to work on your self-esteem too, because then you have to understand, okay, I failed not because I'm bad at it, but because I'm learning. Yeah, that's a very important observation that you made, because you could just see it as, oh, I fail, I'm not good at this, I'm just going to try something else, and then you lose your chance, you'll miss your opportunity to do something that you love.
Yeah, or you start blaming sometimes, like there's someone else's fault or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
Or I think the worst part, you say, oh, I need to learn, but you just learn. But what you call it, you say it's a push. You need to get that push, like a booster button. Yeah. That's what it has to create.
It's a boost, and then it's mixed with this passion, that I have, like, when I see glass, it's just like, I have a lot of passion. I love glass. There's something about glass. I don't know. I have a connection with glass that I can't describe. It's not rational. It's just a lot of passion. So even when I was failing, I never, ever gave up, because there was this fearless drive inside of me that just wanted to have more and more. Maybe it's like I don't know, an addiction, but in a healthy way, because it keeps you going.
But that's where learn from failure is just way too weak.
Yeah.
Like you fail and then you learn from it. No. You fail and then you use the power from that. That's what you used the push.
Yeah, this internal drive.
Yes.
Like fearless drive.
Yeah.
I can tell you're an expert on creativity, because you're analyzing with even better than myself.
No, I've never thought about this. This is I think no one has really described this. So you coined something. You coined something today. So now we need to teach people, just like flow, right? We have always had flow, but when someone put a word on flow, suddenly we are aware of flow.
Right.
Or someone coins the Eureka Moment. Now we know what this is. You coined the Mierda Moment. Now now we are aware of it. Next time we fail, we can say, now, okay, I'm going to use this energy, I'm going to push through. So how do you get people to push through instead of just learning from the mistakes? How do we take advantage of this power, this force?
To motivate them, I would say the first thing they have to find is this passion, like something that they are passionate about. And if they are passionate about, I think that they'll find that drive no matter what. Because you just become stubborn, like you don't want to let go of it. and remember that failure is a good thing.
Okay, so number one, you have to have passion, and I agree, because if you don't have passion and you get a failure, the push is not going to come, right? And then you need to say it's not a problem.
It's not a problem, and then you also have to remember that it's not you. Like, it's not that you're bad at that or that you're not qualified to do that. It's just that maybe that wasn't the moment, or maybe that wasn't the thing that you had to be doing at that moment, and then you have to try something new. Yeah. But if you have that passion inside of you, then it will give you that force, that inner drive to keep trying and trying stubbornly.
Correct.
Until you get it.
So first, you have to have the passion. Second of all, you have to know it's not you. It's not personal. And
exactly.
Then third, what?
Just never give up. Never give up. Keep trying. But always, I think that our whole lives, are a learning process.
You know computer games, when you press the booster button and suddenly you get some extra energy like this, or a Red Bull, and suddenly you have more energy. To me, this is what happens when you you can learn from failures all the time. Like, I learn from failure, but I'm talking about the Mierda Moment, which is you learn from failure and get the boost, which doesn't happen every time you fail. It happens sometimes when you fail, and then in your case, when you say, okay, now I need to figure this out, and you got that boost to learn and study and take the paper, and you kind of flew over the obstacle, right? What is it that triggered that boost?
In that time, I was still learning, so I was in my head, it crossed my mind that maybe I was not good at it and I should give up. When I thought about giving up, then it made me really sad, like, no, I cannot give up. So I'm gonna keep trying, and it was like this internal conflict that somehow I overcame thanks to this powerful drive that it's hard to explain where it comes from. It's somewhere inside, like it's this force to never give up.
Yeah, so what was in your head?
I felt frustration at that moment, the first time it crashed. I was frustrated, I was mad at myself, I was hard on myself, and then I realized, no, that's not the way to go.
You talk about how there's tension in glass.
Yes.
So there's also tension in failure.
Yes, there is always tension in failure.
And then you can use the tension in the failure to create that burst of energy to try to figure it out.
Exactly.
Instead of just giving up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. But it boils down to what you said about trying to figure it out, trying to solve that problem, that challenge, that puzzle, but then sometimes you may not figure it out, I guess. So you also have to be comfortable with flexibility and being able to shift perspectives.
The lesson here is, when something cracks, don't get frustrated. Use that energy to crack the problem.
Brilliant. Excellent. And that's very important because, you know, now that you said that, I read this article a long time ago that talked about Leonardo da Vinci. And people, when you think about him, you think, oh, he had a great life since day one. It's like, no, he spent like 16 years completely in the dark. Nobody knew about him. He failed many times. He had horrible times, really hard times. And then after 16 years, he started doing things and he became like popular. But I think it's very important to remember that things don't happen overnight. Things take time, and never give up, because you'll get there. If you have that power, that inner strength, you're gonna get there.
But again, it's not enough to never give up. It's more powerful than this. It is the difference between creative people, successful creative people, and not successful creative people. It's not that creative people don't give up. It is that they use the force of the failure to push themselves forward. They use the energy of the failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Mierda Moment is the moment in which you harness the energy of your failure to push you forward.